Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
Have you ever felt like you're just, drowning in advice? It seems like everyone, from the latest self-help guru to your wonderfully well-meaning aunt, has the secret recipe for a well-lived life.
Absolutely. It's a flood out there.
Right. But how do you actually cut through all that noise? How do you find the stuff that's truly actionable, the insights that genuinely make a difference?
That's the challenge.
Well, that's pretty much our mission today. We're taking a deep dive into the Algebra of Happiness by Scott Galloway.
And, this isn't your typical glossy self-help book. Not at all. Galloway, he's a professor at NYU's Stern School of Business. And he basically distilled these life strategies into this really popular final lecture.
For thousands of students, right?
Exactly. Thousands. And he leans right into those big universal questions that, let's face it, so many of us grapple with. Things like, what career path should I even choose? How do I set myself up for success without, completely burning out?
The balancing act.
Yeah, how do I reconcile ambition with actually growing as a person? And maybe the biggest one.
Yeah.
What can I do now so I don't have those awful regrets when I'm 40, 50, or even 80 years old?
What makes this whole thing so intriguing, I think, is that Galloway just comes right out and admits he has basically no academic credibility to be counseling people on how to live their lives.
He's incredibly upfront about it.
Yeah, really upfront about his own struggles. Multiple business failures, divorced by 34, even being called insane by a very successful venture capitalist. It's this self-aware, almost brutally unfiltered perspective that's just so central to his approach. And frankly, it's kind of refreshing.
It really is. He describes his own life as needing a serious squint, as he puts it, to look like any sort of framework for happiness.
Yeah, a squint.
It's precisely that no mercy, no malice viewpoint, though, that makes his observations so compelling. He's pulling from this incredibly diverse set of experiences, as a son, a husband, a dad, an academic, a serial entrepreneur.
All those different hats.
Right. So our goal in this deep dive is really to unpack his core, let's call them equations, for a rewarding life, and pull out those surprising, sometimes maybe uncomfortable, but always insightful nuggets that have clearly resonated with millions.
It is a fascinating premise, isn't it? Taking life advice, and pretty profound advice at that, from someone who freely admits to grappling with mild depression, anger mostly, and what he calls a past character deficiency. Yet somehow his insights have just struck a massive chord. And you, listening right now, are probably asking many of the same questions his students were asking. So let's dive in and explore how Galloway tries to answer them.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
So with that rather unconventional introduction to the man himself, let's get into some of Galloway's core principles, starting with this powerful idea about how happiness itself isn't static, how it shifts throughout our lives. What's the big idea there?
Well, he kicks things off by really challenging our whole notion of what happiness even looks like at different stages. He makes this really profound point that happiness isn't linear. It's not a straight line upwards.
Right. Not just accumulating more of it.
Exactly. In fact, he suggests that stress and even periods of real unhappiness are a normal, almost inevitable part of the journey, especially during certain phases of adulthood.
Yeah.
He paints this picture of childhood through the college years as pure magic.
Yeah, he uses imagery like Han Solo, beer, road trips, that feeling of self-discovery.
Right, a time of relatively low stakes, boundless possibility. It feels almost limitless.
That period of almost idyllic freedom where the world genuinely feels wide open. But then, as he puts it, and this is pretty blunt, from your mid-20s through your mid-40s, shit gets real.
Yeah, that's his phrasing.
This is when those heavyweights start to land, right? Work pressure, financial stress, the harsh reality of loss, like loved ones getting sick, even dying. It really comes into full view.
It's a period of intense pressure. Definitely. You're trying to build the life you've kind of been told you should achieve, the one society expects. And the crucial insight here, really, for anyone listening who might be right in the thick of that phase, is this. If you find yourself stressed, or maybe even genuinely unhappy during this stretch of adulthood, you need to recognize it's a normal part of the journey.
That's key. It's not a personal failing.
Exactly. It's not a sign you're doing something wrong or that you're somehow deficient. It's simply the reality of navigating those really demanding formative years. And he offers this powerful reassurance that, happiness is still waiting on the other side.
So it's almost like a tunnel you have to navigate through, because he then describes this significant shift often happening in your 50s or maybe even earlier for what he calls soulful individuals, where you start to recognize wonderful blessings everywhere. And these aren't necessarily grand achievements, are they?
No, not at all. It's the simple, profound things. Your children, who maybe look and smell like you, the beauty of nature, like waves you can actually ride, the sheer ability to work and support your family, the chance to travel and see amazing places, just basic gratitude kicks in.
Yeah, a fundamental shift in perspective.
And in this later phase, he points out that even when tragedy strikes, which it inevitably does, it's often beaten back by our best ideas. Science. There's a resilience there. This period allows for this crucial reevaluation, where you genuinely start smelling the roses, as the saying goes.
You finally afford yourself the happiness you deserve.
Yes, and you recognize that your time here is finite. It's a really powerful and hopeful message, I think. The struggles of early and mid-adulthood aren't forever, and a different, maybe deeper kind of happiness awaits. The key insight really is that true happiness isn't about avoiding hardship, but about evolving through it to find a deeper sense of contentment.
That leads us right into the next logical question, doesn't it? If stress is a normal part of this journey, especially in those middle years, how does Galloway advise we actually handle that pressure to, quote, achieve balance, something we hear constantly?
Oh, he goes right after that concept. The idea of balance in youth, especially. He argues pretty forcefully that prioritizing balance when you're trying to establish your career is largely a myth for most people.
A myth. That's strong.
Yeah. Now, he's quick to distinguish this from what he calls struggle porn. He's not saying you have to be miserable 24/7, and you can definitely experience rewards alongside success. But the core message is clear and maybe a bit uncomfortable for many.
And that core message is pretty definitive, isn't it? He says something like, the slope of the trajectory for your career is unfairly set in the first 5 years post-graduation.
Exactly. Unfairly, he adds. And if you want that trajectory to be steep, meaning, significant career advancement, economic security down the line, you're going to need to burn a lot of fuel, as he puts it.
It takes intense effort.
Intense effort. His philosophy is blunt. The world does not belong to the big, but to the fast. It emphasizes strategic, intense effort and endurance, not just coasting or being the biggest player in the room.
And he makes this personal, right, using his own experience.
He does. He talks about the period from age 22 to 34. For him, it was essentially work and not much else. He's very open about this period of intense imbalance, costing him his first marriage, his hair,
Wow.
and, as he says, arguably his 20s, a huge chunk of his youth, yet he directly attributes the balance he does have now, thriving family, successful career, to that very intense, focused period of imbalance earlier on.
That's a stark trade-off.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it's one he believes was essential for him to get where he is today.
That really makes you reflect, doesn't it? On the trade-offs involved in your own early career choices, are you prioritizing immediate comfort, that elusive balance right now? Or are you maybe setting yourself up for longer-term economic security and potentially, as he found, greater balance later down the road?
It definitely challenges the conventional wisdom that you must have this perfectly balanced life right from day one.
Yeah, it suggests it might be more about seasons, maybe? Intense focus for a season, then reaping the rewards later.
Exactly. It's about being really intentional with your choices, even if those choices mean a temporary period of, extreme focus and maybe some sacrifice.
So, okay, let's say you're on that intense trajectory or even just trying to get there. What are some tangible signs or indicators of future success? Galloway has this very direct, almost visceral take on the indicative power of, sweat and strategic choices. That one really stuck with me.
Oh yeah, the sweat ratio. He boils it down to this remarkably simple, almost physical ratio.
Yeah.
The ratio of time you spend sweating to watching others sweat is a forward-looking indicator of your success.
Sweating versus watching ESPN, basically.
Precisely. He creates this vivid contrast. Show him someone who watches sports every night, spends all day Sunday watching football, but never actually works out themselves. He says he'll show you a future probably filled with anger and failed relationships. But conversely, someone who sweats consistently, who actively participates as much as they passively watch, whether it's sports or anything else requiring effort, that person, in his words, is good at life. It emphasizes consistent, active engagement and discipline over just passive consumption.
That's such a powerful, almost immediate signal, isn't it? It's not just about physical health, clearly,
Yeah.
but the underlying discipline and energy it represents. But then he pivots completely, arguing that the single most important decision in life isn't actually career-related at all. What does he say it is?
This is where it gets really profound, I think. He says the most crucial decision you'll ever make in life is who you choose to partner with for the rest of your life.
Wow, okay.
He argues that business school students, for example, often obsess over their careers and friendships, which are important, of course. But a spouse who is a genuinely good teammate is invaluable.
A good teammate. I like that phrasing.
Yeah. This partner, he explains, softens the rough edges and magnifies the shine of life. He says he's seen so many friends with really impressive careers, great social lives, but they're still deeply unhappy because their spouse just isn't a true partner. There's misalignment, maybe a lack of appreciation.
And conversely.
Conversely, he sees less economically successful friends who have found true partners, and they are tangibly happier. It's a stark reminder that personal relationships often underpin everything else, including professional success and overall well-being.
Okay, so if choosing a partner is that critical, what does it mean practically? How do you choose what? He breaks it down, right, into key areas for alignment.
He does. He suggests the best romantic partnerships align on three fundamental things. First, somewhat controversially perhaps, physical attraction. He's very blunt here. Good sex is 10% of a relationship, but bad sex is 90% of a relationship.
Okay, straight talk.
Very straight talk. Second, shared values. This covers the big stuff. Religion. Do you want kids? How do you envision raising them? How close do you want to live to parents? Willingness to make economic sacrifices. Who handles which responsibilities? The fundamental building blocks.
Got it. Values alignment. And the third.
And the third, which he highlights as especially critical, is money. He states point blank that financial stress is the #1 source of marital acrimony. You absolutely need to ensure your partner's contribution, their approach to spending and saving, their expectations about money all align with yours.
So have those tough conversations early.
Absolutely. Have them up front. Don't avoid them. This provides remarkably clear, actionable advice on, foundational lifestyle habits, but more importantly, underscores the critical importance of selecting that life partner. Give you really specific areas to consider beyond just, initial chemistry.
Okay, moving from those foundational life equations into navigating the modern world, Galloway offers some very direct, maybe even controversial advice on success, money, and career paths. Let's start with his stark assessment of the link between credentials, location, and wealth.
Yeah, he's quite provocative here. He asserts, pretty bluntly, that the United States operates on a kind of caste system when it comes to higher education.
A caste system. Wow.
Yeah. And coupled with this, he points out that economic growth is increasingly clustering in just a handful of what he calls super cities. He actually predicts that 2/3 of economic growth over the next 50 years will happen in these really dense urban centers where opportunity is a function of density.
He has that analogy about cities being like Wimbledon. Right?
Exactly. He likens these cities to Wimbledon, meaning even if you aren't Rafael Nadal, your game is going to improve just by being on the court with the best. Or you'll quickly realize you don't belong.
Right. It forces you to up your game or get out. And he takes this even further, saying your degree, like the level and the specific institution combined with your zip code, can basically estimate with decent accuracy how much money you'll make over the next decade.
He's not saying this is fair, by the way. He's just saying this is how the system currently works. It's the reality of the levers that influence economic velocity.
So what's his advice then, given that reality?
His advice is brutally simple and pragmatic. While you're young, get credentialed and get to a city. Both get difficult, if not impossible, as you get older.
So strike while the iron's hot.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And he directly cautions against assuming you're the exception to the rule, the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates who dropped out and made it big. For the vast majority of people, he argues, this path credentials plus city provides a concrete, albeit maybe romantic, strategy for maximizing your economic potential early on.
Okay, so the message is, understand the system, play the game to your advantage when you're young. Use those levers. But then he shifts gears a bit, moving to a more nuanced perspective on wealth itself, suggesting there's something beyond just accumulating money that brings real, sustained joy.
Yes, definitely. He acknowledges the link between money and happiness. Absolutely. Money can buy happiness up to a certain point, mostly by reducing stress, providing security, options.
Buys you freedom from worry,
Yeah.
essentially.
Right. But he emphasizes that once you reach a certain level of economic security, that correlation just flattens out. More money won't necessarily make you less happy, he says, but its impact on your overall well-being plateaus significantly.
The returns diminish.
Exactly. And he reflects very personally on his own mistake, admitting he spent most of his life just chasing more money instead of pausing and really asking himself, okay, Scott, what actually makes me happy?
And this is where his idea of being in the zone comes in, right? That feeling of flow.
Precisely. He argues that true happiness, that deep satisfaction, is found when you lose the sense of time, forget yourself, and feel part of something larger. This isn't about buying more stuff. It's about engaging deeply in interests and hobbies that add, as he calls it, texture to your personality.
Like cooking or capoeira, playing guitar, mountain biking, whatever it is for you.
Anything that gets you into that flow state. He shares a really personal story about discovering writing only a few years ago and how it's become one of the most rewarding parts of my life, even a form of therapy for him.
And he wishes he'd started sooner.
Oh yeah, he explicitly wishes he'd started writing 30 years earlier, which really highlights the long-term compounding returns of investing in these non-monetary pursuits. It's an investment in yourself, really, an emotional asset that grows richer over time.
And this whole idea of compounding, it applies way beyond just money, doesn't it?
Absolutely. He uses that 1 second everyday app as a beautiful example. You make this tiny daily investment capturing just 1 second of video, and it builds into this incredible 6-minute memory capsule of your year with your kids.
That's powerful.
It is. And he relates it even more fundamentally to the mother-child bond, arguing it's built on countless tiny, small investments every day. Consistency over grand gestures.
So how do you actually apply this powerful concept of compounding to your relationships day to day? What's the actionable advice?
His advice here is refreshingly simple, almost mundane, but powerful in aggregate. Take a ton of pictures, text your friends stupid things, check in with old friends as often as possible, express admiration to coworkers, and every day tell as many people as you can that you love them.
Small, consistent actions.
Exactly. The payoff, he stresses, is small at first, and then it's immense. It really shifts the focus from just financial accumulation to this much more holistic view of investment, emphasizing those long-term exponential returns of non-monetary pursuits and, crucially, genuine relationships. It's about building a truly rich life, not just a rich bank account.
Building on that holistic view, Galloway then gets into some really interesting territory around evolving masculinity, what true richness actually means, and the critical importance of avoiding self-destructive habits. It's a very candid part of the book.
It really is. He frames his concept of find your gorilla as this personal journey of what masculinity means to him. He describes feeling masculine as a younger man by, impressing friends, having sex with strangers, being physically ripped, standard stuff maybe.
Right, the external markers.
But as he's gotten older, his definition has profoundly evolved. Now, he says, he feels strong like bull by being a loving and responsible head of household, providing for his family, being relevant and useful in his work.
But
He even brings in studies on male monkeys.
monkeys.
Yeah. Showing that higher ranks in mating success often go to those with more social bonds, not necessarily the biggest or strongest physically. For him now, it's about social contribution, not just physical display.
So shifting from this individualistic pursuit of status towards a more communal, responsible kind of strength.
Exactly. He mentions that being a good citizen, like being a good neighbor, respecting institutions, helping people he'll never meet, voting that stuff makes him feel like beating my chest now.
Yeah.
It's about moving from being, in his words, a boy in a man's body to actually being a man. It's significant maturation of what strength really means.
That's a powerful shift, and this expanded definition of strength leads right into how he redefines richness, doesn't it? He has that formula: equity, wealth.
Yes. He defines rich very specifically, having passive income greater than your expenses, your burn rate. And he gives this really compelling, almost counterintuitive example.
His dad, right?
Right, his dad and stepmother. They get about $50,000 a year from dividends, pension, Social Security. They spend about $40,000 a year. Therefore, he says, they are rich, they have freedom, they're not stressed about money month to month.
And he contrasts that with
He contrasts that sharply with friends he knows earning, say, $1 to $3 million a year, big money, but they spent almost all of it on things like expensive Manhattan, private schools, houses in the Hamptons, payments to ex-wives.
Keeping up appearances.
Exactly. These individuals, he argues, are actually poor by his definition because they are constantly chasing their burn rate. This highlights this crucial shift in focus.
Yeah.
Young people are 100% focused on their earnings. Adults also focus on their burn. It's a fundamental distinction between just income and actual sustainable wealth.
That's a really important distinction. Then he tackles a big one, alcohol. A significant self-destructive habit for many.
He does. And he brings in data, citing the Harvard Medical School grant study, this incredible 75-year longitudinal study of 300 men starting at age 19. That study found alcohol was the single best predictor of unhappiness down the line.
Wow. The single best predictor.
Yep. Leading to failed marriages, derailed careers, terrible health outcomes. Galloway then shares his own past, admitting alcohol made him a mediocre person after college, even though he felt funny and optimistic when he was drunk. He directly encourages you, the listener, to address substance use if it's clearly getting in the way of your relationships, your professional path, or just your life overall. It's blunt, but it's a crucial warning.
He also offers a very practical piece of advice many of us could probably apply. Car lion, what's that about?
It's about experiences versus things. Studies consistently show people overestimate the happiness new purchases will bring, like a fancy car, and dramatically underestimate the long-term positive effect of experiences.
So the shiny new object wears off quickly.
Right. His recommendation is straightforward. Invest in experiences over things. Drive a Hyundai and take your wife to St. Bart's. This reinforces that idea again. True joy comes from lived moments, shared experiences, not just accumulating stuff.
Then he moves to something deeply personal and profound. Give someone a good death.
Yeah, this is powerful. Galloway describes spending 7 months living with his mother in her final days, and she was terminally ill, helping her, as he puts it, exit more graceful. He calls it deeply satisfying, despite the hardship, and an experience he will cherish for the rest of his life. It suggests that providing comfort and presence at life's end is maybe as instinctively rewarding as nurturing new life. It's an act of profound love and gratitude.
That experience seems to lead into a broader perspective on resilience and failure, doesn't it?
It does. He states very clearly that everyone experiences failure and tragedy. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
The key to success, he argues, isn't somehow avoiding these things, but rather developing the ability to mourn and then move on.
Processing it, not getting stuck.
Exactly. He candidly shares his own list. A failed marriage, multiple bankrupt businesses, losing his mother, all before he turned 40. But he says thanks to a great education, good friends, some talent, and crucially, being born in the best zip code in the world, USA, these were ultimately obstacles for me, not barriers. Perspective matters.
And finally, in this section, he offers this kind of calming perspective for life's inevitable ups and downs. Nothing is ever as bad or as good as it seems.
Right. He notes that bigger forces, like market dynamics, often trump individual performance, meaning your successes aren't entirely your own doing, and your failures aren't entirely your fault either.
Take some pressure off.
It does. He highlights that seniors often look back and wish they'd been less hard on themselves. And this applies just as much to relationships, where forgiveness is absolutely key, because both you and your partner will inevitably screw up, as he puts it, and need grace. It really encourages this holistic view of strength and richness, warns against common pitfalls, and offers a compassionate lens for navigating life's roller coaster. It's about finding that sustainable middle ground of perspective.
Okay, let's shift focus now to the actual toolkit Galloway provides for shaping your personal and professional trajectory. And he kicks this off by challenging a very popular, almost sacred piece of advice: follow your passion.
Oh, he definitely takes aim at that one. He argues that talent alone is merely entry level. It might get you into the VIP room, he says, but guess what? There are 75 million other people also in the top 1% globally, all vying for success. Talent isn't enough.
So what is enough? What's the differentiator?
The true chaser, as he calls it, the thing that takes talent over the top, is hunger, real driving hunger. And he admits he wasn't necessarily born with it. For him, it came from a great deal of insecurity and fear, coupled with his basic instincts. That's a very different, maybe less glamorous origin story for ambition than we often hear.
He gives that relatable example from his college days, right? Wanting the Morgan Stanley job.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about how his desire to signal success by landing a job at Morgan Stanley was fundamentally driven by wanting to increase his selection set of mates at UCLA. It was a hunger to impress, a pretty primal drive for validation and status.
Which directly clashes with the follow your passion mantra we hear so often from commencement stages.
Absolutely. Galloway states, quite emphatically, the secret is to find something you're good at. The rewards and recognition that stem from being great at something will make you passionate about whatever that something is. Passion follows mastery, not the other way around.
And he learned this himself.
He learned it firsthand. He quit investment banking when that hunger just to impress eventually led him to misery. He realized that success without fulfillment wasn't sustainable, wasn't worth the cost. So for him, passion is a byproduct of getting really good at something and seeing the results, not the initial spark you chase.
He also identifies a couple of really profound moments, catalysts, that truly forged his own hunger, didn't he?
Yes, two major ones. The first was his mother's aggressive breast cancer diagnosis while he was in grad school. It left him feeling powerless, wishing he had more money and influence to get her the absolute best care imaginable.
That's intense.
Very. The second was the 2008 financial crisis, which, in his words, seriously fucked with my sense of why I was here. When he suddenly found himself unable to provide for his young son in Manhattan at the level he'd envisioned. These weren't abstract worries, they were deeply personal, visceral drivers.
So his hunger was really forged in the fire of real-world challenges and fears, not just some abstract desire for success.
Precisely. And he notes that lately, his hunger has actually evolved again. It's shifted from pursuing primarily money to seeking relevance, which is leading him to more soul-focused projects. He even tries to instill hunger in his own boys through chores, connecting work with reward, and he jokes occasionally by mugging them to steal their earnings.
As a life lesson.
As a life lesson, apparently. It's just a stark, brutally honest perspective on the often uncomfortable drivers of ambition. It really challenges that conventional wisdom of following passion and shows how life's difficulties can genuinely forge resilience and drive.
Okay, so from the raw drivers of ambition, let's talk about how Galloway advises actually embracing adulthood. He emphasizes responsibility, professionalism, and maybe surprisingly, the value of the often overlooked boring path.
Right. He sees graduation as this really pivotal moment. It's the point where your role, especially with your parents, starts to reverse. Your actions, he says, should start communicating, I got this to them. You should aim to become a source of solutions for them rather than a source of stress.
Flipping the script.
Exactly. And he emphasizes how incredibly rewarding it is to help take care of your parents, encouraging listeners to start now if they're able. He contrasts his own two graduations to make the point.
UCLA versus Berkeley.
Yeah. His exit from UCLA was pretty lackluster 5 years, a 2.27 GPA, practically begging professors for passing grades just to get out, versus his Berkeley MBA graduation, where he was the student speaker, proudly watched by his mother, who was battling cancer at the time. It's a powerful illustration of personal growth, taking ownership, becoming accountable.
And he refines that don't follow your passion advice again here, right?
He does. He notes that the commencement speakers doling out that advice are often already rich. And they probably got there, he argues, partly by knowing when to give up on things that weren't working. Your real job, he insists, is to find something you're good at, and after 10,000 hours of practice, get great at it.
Mastery first.
Mastery first. The passion he maintains often follows the mastery and the rewards, financial recognition, satisfaction that come with being genuinely good at something. It's a much more practical, less idealistic approach.
This leads straight into his concept of boring is sexy. What's the thinking there?
He looks at careers almost like asset classes. If a sector is glamorous and overinvested with human capital, think working at Vogue, producing movies, opening trendy restaurants, the returns on your individual effort are likely to be suppressed. You get more psychic income from the coolness factor than actual risk-adjusted economic returns.
So too much competition chasing too few rewards.
Basically. He, on the other hand, says he intentionally invests in boring businesses, things like iron and ore smelting, insurance, even pesticides, because that's where he's met many truly wealthy individuals who aren't chasing the spotlight. They're just quietly building valuable enterprises. It's a pragmatic, unglamorous strategy that prioritizes financial security over perceived coolness.
He then gets really practical, tackling something many of us probably struggle with, getting the easy stuff right. Basic professionalism.
Oh, yeah. And he admits he's struggled his whole career with this stuff. Showing up late, not following up promptly on emails, losing momentum on projects. He says very candidly that a lack of professionalism and bad manners has reduced the slope of my trajectory. It sounds simple, but mastering the basics is often harder than it looks.
He illustrates this with that infamous email exchange, doesn't he? The one that went viral.
He does. Back in 2010, an NYU Stern student showed up an hour late for his brand strategy class. Galloway dismissed him. The student then wrote this long, complaining email. Galloway's reply was, well, brutal.
What did he say?
He told the student, essentially, to get your shit together. He wrote, respecting institutions, having manners, demonstrating a level of humility, these are all relatively easy. Get the easy stuff right. Not possessing them will hold you back. That exchange blew up online, got hundreds of thousands of views, and he actually made it a static part of his course outline. It's just practical, no-nonsense advice on cultivating professional habits and making strategic career choices that prioritize long-term stability and return over fleeting glamour.
Following on from the practicalities of career and professionalism, Galloway also dives into those internal battles we all seem to face. Specifically, he talks about imposter syndrome and the profound importance of finding and really owning your unique voice.
He's incredibly open about this. He talks about his own anxiety, feeling like a fraud, even when receiving prestigious awards, like one from Greg Maffei, the former CFO of Microsoft and CEO of Liberty Media. Big deals.
Even then.
Even then. He admits that whenever success came his way, he had this nagging feeling he was just fooling them. And he points out how common this is. Apparently, 70% of Americans experience imposter syndrome at some point. And those thoughts, he warns, get louder unless you actively address them. It's a really universal struggle, clearly, even for people who seem incredibly accomplished from the outside.
So what's his strategy for dealing with it? How does he overcome it?
He says, first off, he tries to cut himself some slack, to actually acknowledge his hard work, the risks he's taken, the ways he's given back. But crucially, he believes that achievement is just a moment in pencil, unless you can share it with people you care about. Then it becomes real, a memory in permanent ink.
So connecting achievement to relationships gives it weight, makes it real?
Exactly. It ties achievement directly to connection and shared experience, making it less about individual glory and more about shared meaning. That's a powerful shift in perspective, I think.
Definitely. And this leads into how you actually find and hone your voice amidst those internal battles, right?
Right. Galloway admits he didn't inherit his father's natural charm. In fact, he jokes he developed a knack for being offensive. But he did inherit the ability to hold a room. He identifies as an introvert in one-on-one situations, but paradoxically, as the group gets bigger, he finds crisp insights come to him. In front of hundreds, he finds humor and warmth and the confidence to reach beyond my grasp. It's about finding your authentic performance space where you thrive.
He even talks about his NYU class as his stand-up comedy club.
Yeah. His brand strategy class with 170 second-year MBAs, he says he put significantly more effort into teaching that class for less pay than his corporate speaking gigs, precisely because he uses it to hone his craft, test material, and find his voice. He reflects on seeing his 88-year-old father watching him teach one day and realizing how his opportunities being born in America, the generosity of California taxpayers funding his education, gave him the confidence to stand in front of a room full of people, look each in the eyes and say, I believe this to be true.
That's quite a moment of reflection.
It is. And finally, related to voice, he emphasizes, know your worth. He's very clear-eyed about his market value being tied to his specific expertise in big tech, and also to external factors, like society's current obsession with it. He sees his relationship with NYU almost like a free agent in sports.
Meaning he negotiates hard.
He negotiates aggressively because, as he puts it, his star is burning bright right now. He understands this value won't last forever, and he plans to leverage it while he can. Which reminds us that even our professional value has cycles. So this whole section really normalizes those internal battles with self-doubt, encourages finding and using your authentic voice, and gives insight into strategically leveraging your value in the marketplace when you have it.
Now let's explore one of the most, romanticized paths to success: entrepreneurship. Galloway offers a very grounded, often counterintuitive perspective on being an entrepreneur versus being an employee, and why understanding economic cycles is absolutely critical for both paths.
He starts by immediately challenging the common dream with the heading, you are probably not Mark Zuckerberg.
Manages expectations right away, right?
He lays out 4 key questions, or maybe tests, for anyone thinking about starting their own thing.
Yeah.
First, can you sign the front, not just the back, of checks? Meaning, can you handle the responsibility of paying yourself and others, possibly from your own savings initially?
Okay, that's a big one. What else?
Second, are you truly comfortable with public failure? Because most startups fail. Third, Do you genuinely like to sell? Because you'll be selling constantly your idea, your product, yourself. And fourth, how risk-aggressive are you really? Not just saying you are, but really. He points out most people just can't stomach working without a guaranteed paycheck or risking their own capital.
And the reality of entrepreneurship, he stresses, is often far from glamorous.
Far from it. He says it's fundamentally a salesperson role, often with negative commissions in the beginning, until you raise capital or somehow reach profitability. He even bluntly states that most entrepreneurs start companies not necessarily because they're brilliant visionaries, but often because they actually lack the specific skills needed to be effective employees within traditional company structures.
That's a controversial take.
It is. But he argues that purely on a risk-adjusted basis, being an employee for a good or even great company is often more rewarding financially and less stressful than being an entrepreneur.
So what are those skills of a good employee that entrepreneurs might lack?
He lists a few key ones. Being a grown-up, meaning doing necessary things you might not want to do, like commuting or sitting through boring meetings. Exhibiting civility, being part of a team, being supportive, managing politics. And being secure with yourself, tolerating ambiguity, lack of direct control. He readily admits he possesses almost none of these traits naturally, reinforcing his point that for him, entrepreneurship was largely a survival mechanism because he struggled to fit into conventional employment.
This leads him directly into some crucial and very timely advice about economic cycles, essentially when to take cover.
Yes, he notes that financial crises tend to happen on average every 5 to 7 years. And he points out that based on historical patterns, we are currently well overdue for a significant correction. He identifies several soft metrics, things you don't need a PhD in economics to spot, that often indicate a bubble is forming or peaking.
What kind of metrics?
Things like CEOs going Hollywood, appearing on fashion magazine covers, engaging in really lavish spending, getting distracted from the core business. He mentions Marissa Mayer sponsoring the Met Ball for $3 million or buying Tumblr for over $1 billion, only to find it was mostly porn with little revenue.
Right, signs of hubris or distraction.
Exactly. He also humorously points to CEOs adopting the black turtleneck look like Steve Jobs, saying it often signals the stock is about to crash, like Jack Dorsey, or the FDA is about to shut you down, like Elizabeth Holmes. Another key indicator he points to is mediocrity plus 2 years tech experience, 6 figures.
Meaning?
Meaning when overpaid, relatively mediocre tech workers start genuinely believing they're worth huge salaries, it's often a sign of an inflated market bubble, leads to crazy valuations.
Then there's the gross idolatry of youth.
Yeah, when teenage CEOs are worshipped purely for innovation, often overlooking character or kindness, even for companies with questionable fundamentals or inflated valuations. He recalls his own experience back in 1999, just before the dot-com bust, when he and other founders were seriously looking at buying private jets. That, he says, was a decent signal that the canary is dying. These are all subtle, yet often telling signs of a market peak.
Okay, so these are the warning signs. What should you actually do if you think you might be in a bubble, according to Galloway?
He offers several pieces of advice. First, historically, firms that start coming out of recessions, like in '92 or '09, often fare better long-term because talent and real estate are cheaper. Second, if you're currently in a boom, he advises sticking with a big, stable company rather than jumping to a risky startup. Third, if you're running a startup in a boom, raise more money than needed while you can. Fourth, maybe don't go to business school during a boom unless you see it as a refuge from a potential recession.
And crucially, about personal assets.
Crucially, he says you need to know when to sell assets if they represent a disproportionately large chunk of your wealth. Diversify. And ignore pressure from already rich people who tell you never to sell they can afford the risk you might not be able to. He mentions he himself is currently 80% in cash, fully accepting he might miss out on some gains, but preferring to be on the right side of the street when the recession inevitably hits.
Wow, 80% cash is a strong position.
It is. And finally, and maybe most importantly through all this, he urges everyone to be humble. Realize that a lot of success during a boom is often due to the rising tide lifting all boats, not just your individual brilliance. This offers really crucial, often counterintuitive advice for career planning and financial strategy, especially in these volatile economic times we seem to be in.
Okay, so from those big macroeconomic cycles, Galloway brings us right back down to what truly matters for personal success and meaning. He talks about understanding what you measure in your own life and developing the courage to face rejection head-on. He frames it as measure what matters.
Yeah, and he's very candid here. listing his own personal metrics, the numbers that loom large for him right now. Things like net worth, and he admits his obsession with it, despite wealthy people often claiming they don't care about money.
He calls them out on that.
Gently, yes. He also lists his shockingly low credit score, 580, which he attributes to past immaturity. His social media following and YouTube views, which he calls a kind of dopamine drip. The frequency of visiting his dying father, which was only twice a year, a coarse truth he clearly regrets. The number of students he's taught over the years. And his business success rate. 3 wins, 4 failures, 2 sort of in between.
That's a very specific, revealing list.
It is. And he stresses that numbers yield insights about markets, how value is created, and how we want to live our lives. They provide clarity, force accountability, show you where you're really spending your time and energy.
He then talks about his friend David Carey, using him as a role model, but not necessarily for his impressive career.
Right. David Carey was a big exec at Condé Nast and Hearst, very successful professionally. But Galloway holds him up as a role model, not for that success, which Galloway calls the means, but for not losing the script. The end, for David, was always prioritizing meaningful relationships with his family and friends.
So keeping perspective on what truly matters.
Exactly. David eventually made this admirable decision to leave a very prestigious role specifically to help young people and, as he put it, stop having to fire my friends. It really highlights how those external metrics of success can be misleading. True impact, lasting fulfillment, often comes from inspiring others and maintaining your personal integrity.
What's fascinating, then, is Galloway's own extensive history with rejection. He seems almost proud of it.
He kind of is. He lists them out. Lost all 4 high school class president elections he ran in. Cut from various sports teams. Initially rejected by UCLA, turned down by multiple MBA programs he applied to. And as mentioned, most of his 9 businesses failed. This constant stream of rejection, he argues, is what actually forged his character and resilience. It wasn't avoiding failure, it was about learning how to process it, get back up, and move past it.
Which leads directly to that powerful takeaway. Serendipity is a function of courage.
Yes. He admits that when he was younger, alcohol was his Kevlar against rejection, especially in social situations. But he tells his students now that nothing wonderful will happen without taking a risk and subjecting yourself to rejection.
You have to put yourself out there.
You have to. The fear of rejection, he believes, is often a bigger obstacle than lack of talent or the market itself. His advice is very direct. Train yourself to take small risks daily. Get comfortable with the possibility of being told no. Build that muscle.
He illustrates this beautifully with that story about Cy Cordner, right? Stockbroker.
Oh, it's such a heartwarming story. When Galloway was just 13, feeling completely invisible, he walked into a Merrill Lynch office with $200 he'd saved, wanting to invest. They basically ignored him. But then he went into a Dean Witter office, and a young broker named Cy Cordner, in this incredible moment of genuine kindness, took him seriously.
What did you do?
He spent 30 minutes teaching this awkward 13-year-old kid about stock markets, explained things patiently, and then, incredibly, Cy called Galloway's single mom afterwards just to say nice things about her son. Cy made him feel visible and worthy when he felt anything but.
That's amazing. And Galloway tracked him down years later.
40 years later. Now, a successful professor, Galloway offered a $5,000 bounty to his NYU students to find Cy Cordner. And they did. It led to this incredibly touching reconnection where Cy emailed Galloway simply saying, "I am very proud of you." Just goosebumps. It's such a testament to the profound compounding impact of small acts of kindness and mentorship. This whole section really prompts you to reflect on your own metrics, highlights the huge impact mentors can have, and truly inspires courage in the face of that inevitable rejection, showing how it can actually be a pathway to greater opportunities and connections.
Okay, so after covering all that ground success, careers, failure, resilience, personal growth, Galloway ultimately brings us back to what he considers the absolute core, the bedrock of a well-lived life. And that's the profound power of love and relationships. He states it so simply and so powerfully. Love and relationships are the ends. Everything else is just the means.
Yeah, that's the bottom line for him. He breaks love down into 3 forms. There's love received typically from parents or caregivers when we're young. There's transactional love, loving someone for something you get in return, like intimacy, security, companionship.
The give and take.
Right. And then there's complete or unconditional love, loving someone fully, regardless of what you get back, just for who they are. And his profound insight here is that love received is comforting, love reciprocated is rewarding, and love given completely is eternal. You are immortal.
Wow. Eternal, immortal, that's big.
It is. He frames this unconditional love as the secret sauce cementing the survival of Homo sapiens. He argues that nature has literally designed it to be the most rewarding act we could perform because of its evolutionary purpose ensuring the continuation of the species. To love someone completely, without reservation, is, in his view, the ultimate human accomplishment. It signals your purpose to the universe itself.
Building on that, he makes a really strong point about kids, doesn't he? Differentiating between marriage and having children.
He does. He emphasizes that while marrying someone is obviously meaningful, who you have kids with is profound. It's a decision with much deeper, longer-lasting implications. He states that raising children with a partner who is fundamentally kind and competent leads to these joyous moments smothered in comfort and reward.
But the alternative?
The alternative, raising kids with someone you dislike or who is simply incompetent, means those same moments of joy are smothered in anxiety and disappointment. It's a stark, almost brutal warning about the long-term implications of this most fundamental life choice. Choose your co-parent wisely.
So how do you find such a partner, especially when you're young and maybe easily swayed? He has specific advice there, too.
He does. He advises young people to override the emotion of scarcity, that feeling that good partners are rare, and to simply like someone who likes you.
It sounds almost too simple.
It does. But he observes that young people often fall into this trap of associating rejection with superior DNA. They mistakenly believe someone must be inherently better or more desirable because they're not that into them. It's a flawed logic.
Right, playing hard to get makes them seem more valuable.
Exactly. He shares the endearing example of his own dog, Zoe. Zoe simply picks the person in the room who loves her the most and finds contentment and security in that simple reciprocal affection. It's a lesson in valuing genuine connection and mutual appreciation over perceived status or the thrill of the chase.
And he also points out the practical, even economic advantages of partnership, right? It's not just emotional.
Definitely. He says being single, especially as you get older, is just exhausting, constantly managing everything yourself. He contrasts this with the tangible economic benefits of a stable marriage or long-term partnership. Statistically, married couples by their 50s tend to average about 3 times the assets of their single peers.
3 times? Wow.
Yeah, provided, of course, they take that till death do us part thing seriously and actually build a life together, sharing expenses, responsibilities, allowing each other to focus. From an evolutionary perspective, too, he notes, monogamy tends to improve offspring survival rates. So this whole section really elevates love to its most essential function, providing this profound framework for evaluating relationships and life choices, including their tangible practical benefits beyond just the emotional fulfillment.
Okay, moving from that big picture view of love, Galloway then gets into the real nitty-gritty, the nuances of successful partnerships, and the profound nature of parenting. He offers some very concrete advice for both.
He does. When it comes to marriage or long-term partnership, his main advice is try to be a partner. And the first rule under that is don't keep score.
Don't keep score? What does that mean exactly?
It means resist the very human urge to inflate your own contributions. I did the dishes 3 times this week. And minimize your partners. He urges you to commit to always trying to be on the positive side of the ledger, aiming for generosity, assuming the best, giving more than you think you're getting.
That takes conscious effort.
A lot of it. He also stresses the absolute importance of forgiveness, being willing to genuinely wipe the slate clean when your partner inevitably messes up, because holding on to resentment is toxic. Forgiveness, he says, is absolutely key to sustainable, happy relationships.
And he connects this to the idea that giving becomes more rewarding as we age.
Yes. He points out that caregivers statistically live longer and report higher life satisfaction. Giving is good for us. Marriage, in his view, is fundamentally a promise to give care every day. It's an active commitment to nurturing the other person.
He also has that very practical, almost funny tip about wives.
Yeah. Don't ever let your wife be cold or hungry. Which translates into practical things like investing in dual-zone climate control in the car, always carrying energy bars, maybe buying oversized cashmere scarves. It sounds trivial, but it's about being consistently mindful of their basic comfort and needs, showing you're paying attention.
Small acts of care.
Exactly. And finally, for partnerships, he emphasizes expressing affection and desire often. Affection, touch, Sex these things, he says, reinforce the uniqueness and specialness of your bond. They prevent insecurity and fight off what he calls the cancers of relationships, indifference and contempt. It's about actively nurturing that unique connection.
Then shifting to parenting, he shares a significant personal regret, doesn't he? About co-sleeping.
He does. He talks about turning away his oldest son from their bed when the son was about 2 years old because, Western parenting advice often emphasizes independent sleep for kids. He regrets that now.
So what does he do differently now?
Now, he trusts his instinct more and embraces what he calls a pack approach to sleep. Often 3 or even 4 family members end up piled in their bed. He mentions the Japanese concept of the river, where the parents are the banks and the child is the water flowing safely between them, emphasizing that natural closeness.
Even if it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Even with the physical discomforts. He candidly describes getting kicked in the face, mild asphyxiation from a kid lying on him like a 35-pound bow tie. But he views these moments as small investments. He's banking on these consistent acts of presence and unconditional closeness to ensure his boys remember, deep down, that their parents chose them over anything else.
That's a long-term investment.
It is. He hopes these small daily acts will make it instinctual for his boys to want to lie with and comfort him when he's old and vulnerable someday. It's just concrete, candid advice for nurturing intimate relationships and highlights those long-term compounding returns of seemingly small acts of love and consistent presence, especially with children.
Building on that foundation of presence and connection, Galloway really challenges us to consider love's demands, pushing beyond mere comfort or biological ties. He argues that true love often requires sacrificing our personal ease and enduring discomfort for the sake of others.
Absolutely. He shares this compelling story about friends who, after a family tragedy, made the seemingly insane decision to sell everything and circumnavigate the globe with their 3 young kids on a high-tech catamaran.
Wow. That takes guts.
Right. Galloway initially thought they were crazy, but then he realized their deep joy didn't come from luxury or ease, but from applying their skills and strength together as a family to embrace the challenges and beauty of nature. It reminded him of his therapist, Boris, who once defined love as a willingness to take the life you've built for yourself and tear it up for the other person.
Tear it up for them. That's intense.
It is. And Galloway admits that at age 33, he was so fucking selfish, he wouldn't even let his spouse change the radio station in the car. It shows how far his own understanding of sacrificial love has evolved.
And this definition really clicked for him with his own children, didn't it?
Profoundly. He confesses, with humor, that babies are awful, in many ways demanding, irrational. But instinct kicked in, and his life now instinctively shapes itself around his kids' needs and desires. Things he genuinely hates, like listening to Justin Bieber songs, doing karaoke, riding terrifying roller coasters, become, in his words, just inconveniences in the presence of people you love.
So he endures Montezuma's revenge and sings Bieber.
He does. He endures the terrifying roller coaster and sings Bieber karaoke, not because he enjoys it, but as tangible ways of saying to his sons, "My life is yours and I love you." It's love expressed through action and enduring discomfort.
He then reflects on the simple yet profound act of just tell people you love them.
Yeah, he recalls his CrossFit coach, Sean, constantly taking calls during class and saying, "I love you too, Grandpa." Galloway connects this to the perspective older people often gain from their proximity to death. They prioritize loved ones over everything else, especially consumerism. His suggestion, we should actively interrupt your kid's kid at work just to express that love, because those moments are precious and always worth it.
He also talks about taking affection back, specifically for men. What's that about?
He cites writer Mark Green, who argues that physical affection has often been stripped away from boys and men in our culture, incorrectly linked only to sex or homosexuality. Galloway supports this with research from Dunge Keltner, showing that touch actually activates brain regions associated with reward and compassion. It's good for us.
So he makes a conscious effort with his own sons.
He does. He consciously makes an effort to be physically affectionate with his boys, kissing them on the lips, holding their hands long after it might seem normal. He notes the respect my boys have for the moment when he does this, and the simple magic of a child's hand fitting perfectly into a parent's. This, he says, is about staying tethered to those you love through physical connection.
He also reveals how early childhood memories, specifically vivid images from his parents' divorce, like body surfing with his dad, seeing Grunion run on the beach, identifying aircraft by their headlights at the airport, became fixed into our gray matter, shaping his future instincts and understanding of relationships.
Yeah, those early experiences highlight the deep, often unconscious ways we learn to attach to people. He credits his mother's irrational passion for him, making him feel wonderful and worthy, even when he felt like an unremarkable kid. He tells that lovely Junior's Deli story buying halva, swinging hands with his mom as this core memory of feeling profoundly tethered by her unconditional love. It really challenges you to push beyond personal comfort for deeper connection, to recognize the huge impact of expressing love, and to understand how those early life experiences profoundly shape our relational instincts.
Moving towards the end of life and expanding the definition of family, Galloway offers some deeply moving insights into caregiving and the profound meaning of home.
He starts by contrasting the meaningful first home purchase, often seen as a sign of progress, a forced savings mechanism, but also, he notes, benefiting from tax breaks that disproportionately transfer wealth to the already rich with what he calls the profound last home.
The last home is profound. How so?
Your last home, he argues, its quality and comfort, isn't just about money. It ultimately reflects the number of people who care about your well-being. Who is there for you at the end? Who ensures you're safe and comfortable? That's the true measure.
And he illustrates this with the incredibly powerful story of his mother's final weeks.
Yes. He describes finding her in a urine-reeking long-term care facility, clearly unhappy and unwell. In this defiant, almost spur-of-the-moment act driven by love and desperation, he basically broke her out against medical advice and took her home.
Just took her home.
Just took her home. She passed away 7 weeks later, but she passed away at home, surrounded by family. He considers that ability to die at home a sign of her life's success. She had built relationships strong enough to ensure she was cared for with dignity at the end.
That experience clearly informed the advice he later gave to a young man whose father had terminal cancer.
Absolutely. He shared his key learnings from caring for his mother. Things like, dying at home is often a sign of success, meaning strong relationships exist. Crucially, care for the caregivers, they burn out easily. Set boundaries for yourself. Don't completely halt your own life or career. Share simple things like TV shows or music. Relive their life through stories and pictures. Say, I love you constantly. Recognize that difficult behavior is often the illness speaking, not the person themselves. And be prepared for people to both surprise you with support and disappoint you by vanishing.
And he mentioned what parents want at the end.
Yes, he believes parents at the end want two fundamental things: to know their family loves them immensely, and to see evidence that their parenting gave their children the skills and confidence needed to live rewarding lives of their own. It's a powerful, compassionate blueprint for navigating one of life's most difficult transitions.
This compassionate perspective then broadens out to include chosen family, specifically with love a kid who isn't your own.
Right. Given high divorce rates, step-parents are incredibly common. He makes a point of highlighting positive step-parent figures he knows, like his friend Adam's stepdad Paul, or another friend, Jimmy, who embraced becoming a stepfather, trading a carefree life for a ready-made family, and speaking of his stepdaughters as if they were biologically his. It's a beautiful testament to choosing love.
And he shares his own deeply personal story about his stepmother, Linda.
Yes, his not-so-evil stepmom, as he calls her. Despite being kind of set up by his mom to dislike her as a child, Linda consistently spoiled him, baking his favorite Buckeye cookies, getting him a remote control plane, and even thoughtfully buying him I'm Special pajamas, while she herself was in labor with his half-sister.
Wow, that's real kindness.
It really is. And his insight from this is profound. One of the most noble forms of cooperation that advances the species is caring for those who aren't biologically yours. These acts of chosen love, he argues, make us more human, expanding the very definition of family and connection beyond mere biology.
So what does all this profound love, connection, and caregiving ultimately lead to? He concludes, quite strikingly, that heaven isn't some afterlife, but can be found right here on Earth in present moments of unconditional love. But he also sounds a warning about a disturbing societal trend he sees, the feudal pyramid of experience.
He starts by urging us to appreciate how fortunate you are, reflecting on the devastating AIDS epidemic of the 80s and 90s. He recounts the slow, painful shift in societal thinking from the fast thinking of prejudice, seeing it as a gay disease, to the slow thinking of compassion as friends, colleagues, and loved ones contracted HIV. He recalls ghosts everywhere in places like San Francisco's Castro District and expresses deep regret for not tracking down his college roommate, Pat Williams, who likely suffered alone. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of prejudice and missed connections.
And for Galloway, as an atheist, find your own heaven means finding those sacred moments here and now.
Exactly. Present moments on Earth. He states quite powerfully, the only time I've ever felt sated, ever, is with my family. He describes this ritual of meditating with his young son, touching his forehead in Adam's apple, and in that moment, feeling strong, timeless, immortal, just watching over them. The fact that life is finite, he believes, is actually a blessing because it motivates us to love deeply and pursue meaning now. Find the sacred in the mundane.
He also talks about adopting a love the one's perspective, right? Reflecting on a Berkeley homecoming trip.
Yeah, he describes feeling bittersweet emotions, even guilt, about his past behavior there. And he notes the jarring dystopian juxtaposition he sees now between mentally ill, homeless individuals on the street and affluent tech workers nearby aspiring to make the world a better place with, SaaS software. He acknowledges his own hypocrisy in that observation, but he's learning from his friend George's advice to consciously take the time to remember and visit the people and places along the way. It's a call to stay connected to your past and be present.
He has that lovely description of the tractor beam of home, too.
Yes. He describes how business trips often start with him feeling on a mission. But as the trip winds down, this strong pull back home takes over, leading to an actual physical dopamine release just before seeing his loved ones. He asserts that we are fundamentally wired for this family, friends, mates, colleagues. We thrive on cooperation and caregiving, and evolution rewards us with happiness when we engage in it. It's a deeply ingrained human need.
This ties into his observation on kids. It's all about them, framing parenting through the lens of, surprisingly, market segmentation.
Yeah, only Galloway would do that. He humorously admits that parents probably secretly have favorite children, but who the favorite is shifts constantly based on behavior or needs. He recounts his youngest son cleverly leveraging a planned World Cup trip with his older brother to demand his own special trip to Universal's Islands of Adventure and Volcano Bay Water Park, despite Galloway's intense personal aversion to theme parks. It's a very relatable dynamic for many parents. The kids call the shots sometimes.
But this leads him to a much more sobering observation: the feudal pyramid of recreation.
Yes, this is a stark critique. He uses the theme park experience with its regular tickets, then express passes for extra money, then unlimited express passes, and finally ultra-expensive VIP tours costing thousands as a metaphor for how our entire economy is increasingly segmenting experiences. He says we're barreling toward a society of 350 million serfs serving 3 million lords. Citing the statistics, the top 1% captured something like 85% of post-recession income growth. It's a stark look at economic stratification extending even into our leisure and joy.
Wow. He closes this section, though, with that incredibly vivid personal story illustrating unconditional love, the Kokar body plunge.
Oh, it's fantastic. He's at this water park, Volcano Bay, feeling intense fear and nausea just being there. He sends his 2 young sons up this terrifying 8-story near-vertical water slide, the Kokir body plunge. He waits anxiously at the bottom, heart pounding. When his son emerges, shaken, but okay, the first thing the boy sees is his dad standing right there, albeit looking ridiculous in Havaianas flip-flops and dress socks. But his presence signifies complete unconditional love and safety. The son is immediately relieved and gratified just to see his dad there, someone who loves him completely.
That image says it all.
It really does. It powerfully reemphasizes his core belief that love unconditionally is the one absolute truism in life. It yields not just return, but reward, and is fundamentally the most important act of progress for our species. It's a testament to how far we'll go, how much discomfort we'll endure for those we truly love.
Now let's turn to how Galloway views cultivating our own personal well-being and living authentically. He starts, perhaps predictably given his earlier points, with the imperative of physical and mental strength.
Right. He reaffirms that core idea. Humans are essentially hunter-gatherers, and we're happiest when we're in motion. He brings back that sweating to watching others sweat ratio. It's not necessarily about being ripped, he clarifies, but about a consistent commitment to both physical and mental strength, what we might call grit or resilience. He notes many successful CEOs exercise regularly, and even those early career all-nighters, while potentially harmful long-term, can actually build a certain kind of strength and resilience initially.
But he's also very candid about his own struggles here, particularly with body image and aging.
Incredibly candid. He shares that he was painfully skinny growing up and strongly associated the muscle gain he got from joining the UCLA crew team with his worth as a mate. Now, as he ages and naturally loses some muscle strength, he admits struggling with it, finding no other source of security and worth quite like it. It's a very raw admission, especially from someone in the public eye.
And he admits his own advice about not sweating things is sometimes easier said than done.
Oh, yeah. He says his often quoted line, "Don't sweat the small stuff or the big stuff," is basically a lie when it comes to himself. Stress impacts him more intensely now with age. He forgets to eat, experiences PVCs, those scary irregular heartbeats. He recounts being in the DLD conference in Munich, a big tech event, and nearly collapsing on stage from sheer anxiety.
Wow, but the talk went well.
Ironically, yes, he notes it got 1.1 million views online, and almost no one mentioned his near stroke. It just shows that even people who seem incredibly confident and successful are often grappling with significant anxiety beneath the surface.
He's also very open about managing panic attacks.
Extremely. He talks about having them before big media appearances, like going on Fox with Larry Kudlow. He admits a past tendency to want to self-medicate with alcohol in those moments, though he resisted this time, fearing being seen as out of control. He then humorously lists his current 5 food groups: for coping Lunesta for sleep, caffeine, Cialis, Chipotle for comfort food, and cannabis. It's a darkly funny but very honest acknowledgement of the ongoing struggle for peace of mind that many people face, regardless of external success.
Following that raw honesty about physical and mental struggles, Galloway then moves into exploring the liberating power of crying and the perhaps underappreciated value of simple relational harmony.
He starts by looking at crying almost as an evolutionary tool. It can signal surrender in a conflict, elicit empathy from others, help restore equilibrium for babies. He even references Dr. Harvey Karp's 5 S's for soothing infants. It serves real biological and psychological purposes.
And he shares his own journey with crying.
He does. He recounts his first truly memorable crying episode at age 9, watching, of all things, The Partridge Family on TV, right after his mom had briefly left his dad. It's such a specific, almost mundane memory for what must have been a profound emotional release. He then admits he somehow lost the capacity to cry entirely between ages 34 and 44, a period that included his divorce and his mother's death. Numbness took over.
But that changed.
Yes. Now he says he cries all the time. Especially during movies, he mentions Modern Family and the documentary Gleason, or even just randomly on planes. He even chokes up sometimes while teaching his class.
And he sees this as a good thing.
Definitely. He views happy crying as being frozen in a blissful, immortalized present. And he makes the crucial point that most depression isn't feeling sad, but feeling nothing. So regaining the ability to cry, to feel deeply, is a sign of emotional health and presence. It encourages us to embrace emotional authenticity and recognize the healthy release crying provides.
He then reevaluates family dynamics with this interesting concept: trade closeness for harmony. What does he mean by that?
He describes his own immediate family, his dad, his sister, and himself, as not close by American standards. They don't do big family BBQs or have daily phone calls, but what they do prioritize is harmony.
Low drama.
Exactly. Their low maintenance, no drama dynamic, he says, makes them fundamentally additive to each other's lives. They genuinely like each other, and the relationship isn't a source of stress or obligation. It's a refreshing take, suggesting that peaceful coexistence and mutual respect might be more valuable than forced high-maintenance closeness.
He talks about their annual trips to Cabo, right, as illustrating this dynamic.
Yes. Those trips reveal his now 88-year-old father's physical decline each year, but also his father's continued mental alertness. He reflects on the taxing, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately deeply rewarding nature of caregiving, helping his dad get around, making sure he doesn't fall. He even gives a shout-out to the awesomeness of government regulation like the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, for making mobility easier, showing how collective efforts support individual well-being.
And he contrasts his dad's acceptance with a toddler's behavior.
Right. He notes his father's almost zen-like acceptance of needing a wheelchair now contrasts sharply with, say, a screaming 2-year-old resisting help. It underscores how we cycle through dependency in life, coming full circle from childhood to old age. This whole section really encourages emotional authenticity and maybe rethinking what constitutes a healthy family dynamic, emphasizing the deep rewards of compassionate caregiving and peaceful harmony.
Finally, let's look at Galloway's ultimate advice for living authentically. He focuses on presence, the power of praise, and finding true sustenance in genuine connections rather than chasing fleeting addictive hits.
He starts by stressing the importance of learning to get lost in the moment. He notes that the fastest-growing demographic globally is centenarians, and their longevity isn't just genetics, it's also tied to healthy lifestyles, and, significantly, loving others and being loved. He questions why so many of us are constantly stressed out, building for a better tomorrow that never quite seems to arrive, potentially missing the beauty and joy available today.
He has that funny story about missing his flight, right? Trying to be present.
Yes. He describes intentionally trying to be in the moment at an airport. He bought some nice cured ham, drank a Pilsner, listened to Calvin Harris on his headphones, and completely zoned out, accidentally leaving the secure terminal and missing his flight. But instead of being mad, he saw it as forcing him in the moment.
Yeah.
He values occasionally being able to wave his middle finger at the X factor, the unpredictable stressors of life, and miss a few planes for the sake of genuine presence.
Then, in classic Galloway fashion, he advises simply, don't be an asshole.
Yeah, pretty direct. He observes that kids and dogs are 100% authentic, unfiltered. Adults, however, develop filters and often use them not just for politeness, but sometimes to be deliberately unkind or passive-aggressive. He admits that in the past he was often incredibly open with people who didn't perform, meaning brutally critical, but now acknowledges this was often just being a jerk.
He identifies an arc to this behavior.
Yes, the arc to being an asshole, he calls it. Aspirants are usually nice. Near successful people often become jerks due to insecurity and pressure. Then the truly super successful often become nicer again, partly because they have more to lose, but also, hopefully, because they appreciate their blessings more. It's a clear call for self-awareness and choosing intentional kindness over default jerkiness.
He then strongly advocates to praise others.
Deeply. He views gratitude almost as a form of prayer, citing evidence that it increases health, life expectancy, and is strongly correlated with greater happiness. He admits he used to see complimenting other men, especially as kind of zero-sum game, believing their success somehow diminished his own.
But he feels differently now.
Completely. Now he finds praising others acts like an antidepressant for himself. It makes him feel important, healthy, and confident. He stresses the absolute truth. Nobody ever says at a funeral he was too generous, too kind, and much too loving. You can't overdo genuine kindness and appreciation.
Lastly, he draws this crucial distinction between sustenance addictive substances.
Yes. He explains how random, unpredictable rewards like the likes and retweets on Twitter or wins on a slot machine are what create addiction. They provide these intermittent dopamine hits that keep us hooked. He even compares kids to an addictive substance for parents. In a way, we're biologically wired for their survival, getting hits of satisfaction from their progress. He humorously shares his youngest son's current addiction to a magic 8-ball, highlighting our innate drive for those little dopamine jolts.
But the key insight is about providing something different for our kids.
Exactly. His profound insight is that hopefully his sons will remember that their parents did not offer the dopamine hit of an addictive substance, but instead offered sustenance, true nourishment, meaning we're always here predictable, we're a sure thing wired to love them no matter what, and we present this love with less variance than any other relationship. It's about providing that reliable, unconditional foundation, which is ultimately far more nourishing than fleeting highs. This encourages intentional presence, authentic expression, and finding that profound, reliable sustenance in genuine human connection, rather than chasing the temporary buzz of addictive behaviors.
So after this really comprehensive deep dive, it's crystal clear that Scott Galloway's Algebra of Happiness isn't some dry textbook formula. It's a unique, deeply personal, and unfiltered perspective on the whole messy pursuit of success, love, and meaning.
Absolutely. It's grounded not in abstract academic theory, but in a lifetime of very real triumphs and, just as importantly, very real failures. And it consistently challenges conventional wisdom, pushing us to look much deeper at what truly, genuinely matters in the long run.
And that brings us right back to his ultimate, central, and maybe most powerful idea, which he saves for his epilogue. In the end, relationships are all that matters.
He drives this point home with such force, using the tragic story of Carson and Charlie Evans, who were dear friends of his mother. They were, by all external measures, on top of the world. At one point, financially successful, social prominent, living what seemed like a glamorous life with fancy cars, endless parties.
The dream life, seemingly.
Seemingly. But their story ended in utter emptiness. Charlie died by suicide after financial ruin decimated their lifestyle. And Carson, who struggled with addiction, died alone years later from complications related to opioid withdrawal. It's a devastating illustration of the ultimate emptiness of a life devoid of deep, meaningful connection, no matter how much external success you achieve.
And Galloway applies this directly to himself.
He does. Despite his own admitted addiction to affirmation and economic security, he says he now feels more profoundly than ever the need to actively invest in his relationships, because he recognizes that, in the end, that is all we have and all that matters. Everything else fades.
Wow. So this deep dive into Galloway's Algebra of Happiness really forces you, the listener, to pause and reflect on your own equations for living, doesn't it? What are you prioritizing day to day? What genuinely brings you that deep, sated joy versus just those fleeting hits of dopamine or external validation? We really encourage you to take a moment, identify what truly matters to you beyond the material possessions or the temporary achievements, and then make that conscious choice to invest in those core relationships now, with real intentionality, with unconditional love. That, according to Galloway, is the real math that actually adds up to a well-lived life.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into some pretty profound life lessons. We really hope it's given you something truly valuable to chew on and maybe apply in your own life.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.